which is about recognizing that the world will have negative things in it. You can't avoid it. Like negative things will occur. And our brain is geared towards finding those negative things, right? So we can protect ourselves. Again, it's called negativity bias. That being said, what we see, especially in, the best of the best, is they recognize that negativity, but they don't buy into it. And they go to this place called neutrality. And they get the logic versus dealing with the emotions. And instead of being negative or being super positive in a phony way, what they do is they get to this neutral ground where now they have a choice. Now they have a choice. Here I am. This is what's so. I'm not creating a giant story around it. And here's what I got to do next to go from A to B. And that's it.
Welcome to the Richer Soul Podcast, where we share how to live in harmony across health, wealth, time, relationships, and spirituality. How do you bring them all together to live your ultimate life? The best thing is we've got nothing to sell, just great advice from people who've succeeded and lived that dream. Welcome to Richer Soul, Joshua Lifrak. It's great to have you join us today.
Rocky, it's my utter and complete pleasure. Super excited to be here and to get after it. This is what it's all about, finding a way to enrich your soul. And what a better place to do it than the Richer Soul podcast.
And that's what it's all about for those of us who choose that journey. Not everybody does.
And that's the end of the podcast. I just plugged you, Rocky. And now we're done. We're rolling out.
We always like to start at the beginning, though. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Yeah, so my school absolutely taught me nothing about money. My family's relationship with money was that of scarcity. And I'm gonna touch this in a little bit, but I can vividly remember. So my mother had gone back to graduate school when I was young, and she went back to get a PhD and become a neuropsychologist. And at the time, my understanding was an extreme financial burden on both parents, because my mother wasn't earning money. My father was taking care of everything. And I can vividly remember going through our couch, looking for change to be able to go to Dairy Queen. Like that's how tight it was, right? I did grow up on a dirt road in upstate New York. We were middle class, but it certainly wasn't, an extreme amount of wealth. And so I didn't really learn specifically about money other than it sucks when you don't have it, right? I mean, that's the only way I could put it until I married my wife. And my wife is incredible. She thinks about the future. She's helping us build a solid retirement plan. She's got us to invest in real estate. She's constantly thinking about how can we maximize our time on this planet in terms of the finances. So I didn't really learn about it until years later. And my incredible wife, Karen, was one of the major reasons that I have an understanding whatsoever about finances and how you can make your money work for you.
Do you know how she learned that?
Her parents, her family. She grew up in Israel at the time when Israel wasn't the economic juggernaut that it is now, in all honesty. I mean, she grew up in a pretty humble means as well. Her father was an engineer, though, helped build military planes. And so, they had a decent amount of money, but it wasn't like, we're talking about a time in Israel where this is way before the internet. So, the different types of foods they would get were typically just grown there. It wasn't like you weren't getting Thai food. You weren't getting, it was okay. It was a pretty humble beginning. You got to remember that country has only started in 1948. So it's like that period of time before this most recent generation of kids, it was a scrappy, we're building this country from the ground up. The way that Israel is now, with it densely populated and the skyscrapers in Tel Aviv, I vividly remember flying there the first time. This was in 1999, I believe. I flew there for the first time. And you would literally get off the plane and walk across the tarmac to a bus to get to the airport. Now, Ben Gurion Airport's like one of the nicest in the world. So it was just a different time, even back in the 90s.
And that's not that long ago, really.
No, it's not. There's an incredible book. I'm supposed to plug my book on here, Rocky.
Okay.
But I'm going to plug a different book for unknown reasons. My PR people are now screaming at me. But the book is called Startup Nation. And it really talks about, I read this years ago, and it really talks about how the creativity, honestly, the need of the Israeli people to be inventive and creative and design irrigation systems to turn the desert into a forest, right? Like that book is great because it explains how that country can go from this kind of like dirt road kind of farming world to this industrial complex that's like, invented freaking cell phones, right? Like, so there you go. Like, it's just a different place.
It's fun.
That does not even come close to answering your question. We are so far off the rails right now already, Rocky. My bad. Let me get back on track.
It's quite all right. I grew up just outside of New York City, so there was a large Jewish population when I was
Sure.
growing up. And the one thing that was interesting, they were the ones who, besides ourselves, understood money and they just knew how to be better with it. And I think a lot of it is actually in their religious texts too, and the way they think about it as well. Even though those are the same religious texts as Christians, it comes from a very different viewpoint and a different way of teaching and so forth. But that was the one thing that I had always noticed. And I think even today, people harp on the fact that for whatever silly reasons, like, oh, they did something to make all this money. No, they just followed basic common sense.
Yeah. And basic financial understanding.
So you moved off the dirt road and you ended up in New York City yourself, didn't you?
Yeah, for a little bit.
How did that go?
It was great. New York is especially in your 20s, which is when I was living there. It was an adventure every day, Rocky. You would walk out the door, and I chronicle this in the book Win Today that we're going to talk about a little bit later. That is coming out on June 9th. I talk about I lived on in. Originally, I lived on 3rd Street between 1st and 2nd Ave, which is, Lower East Side. And I lived across the street from the chapter of the New York City chapter of the Hells Angels. And it was like, you never knew what you were going to see any single day, on that street. Every day was an adventure. I loved it. You talk about having to live paycheck to paycheck. That is a place that'll do that to you. Things were super expensive. I was waiting tables, working in the restaurant industry. Eventually moved to the Upper West Side with my now wife and at that time girlfriend, which was awesome because the Upper West Side is like you're right near both parks. You can get out of the city easy. Feel like you have a little bit more space. Yeah, but it was an adventure every day. I vividly remember hopping on the subway one time and Philip Seymour Hoffman was sitting across the subway from me because he lived literally two apartment buildings down on West End there, and so it was kind of interesting that, you would see these people and they're just doing their thing. I'd literally seen him in the park the night before on Shakespeare in the Park. And then now here he is sitting on the freaking subway. And it's like, it was awesome because I think what happens in New York, more so than any other place in the world, is there's this sense that anything is possible. Absolutely anything is possible. You could be having a conversation at the bar and the guy next to you like invented the Band-Aid. Who the heck knows who you're going to meet? And that's the whole thing. That's what you love about that city. And then on the flip side, that city will kick the absolute living crap out of you if you're not locked in. I always said that the "you make it there, you make it anywhere" phrase. It's like one of the best adages ever because there's no tougher place to cut your teeth than.
And the cost of living there has skyrocketed.
Absolutely. There's a reason I'm in Florida now.
Much of New York has moved to Florida. They just visit.
Yeah, I hear that.
So you also went through some financial struggles. When did that occur?
Yeah, so the long story short is I'm living in New York. I have this moment of realization that I love the restaurant industry. It's super fun. I'm working in high-end places. I'm working in 3 and 4-star restaurants. And then I kind of have this epiphany that I need to go back to school and I need to if I'm gonna first of all, kudos to anybody that stays in the restaurant business for a long time because that is a tough industry that will beat you to your knees physically and mentally. And my body, knees, shoulders, back, everything was feeling it on a pretty consistent basis. So I kind of knew I had to make a move. But I ended up getting a master's in sports psychology and ended up down here in Florida, in Sarasota, Florida, working at a place called ING Academy. Now, at the time, there was not a high demand for mental skills coaches or sports psychologists. This is 20 years ago. And so at that time, the pay was not phenomenal by any stretch of the imagination. My wife ended up coming down with me. And like I said, my wife has an entrepreneurial spirit and she started an events planning business and she's doing great, but it's 2006, 2007. And the market is just about to crash and the real estate market is about to crash. And in Florida, when the real estate market crashed, it crashed. I can vividly remember just seeing businesses boarded up and closed. And we're talking about Sarasota, Florida, which is a pretty affluent place. And it got hit pretty hard. And so for us, we had been excited. We had moved out of New York City. We could now afford to purchase our first home. So excited. Hey, we're actually going to be able to, and again, we talked about my wife who's like smart about money. Okay, let's get in. This is going to be investment. Things grow over time, especially real estate, which at that time was a very safe bet, quote unquote. We did not read The Big Short yet, like we hadn't read that book, right? We didn't know. We didn't know the Steve Carell movie. We didn't see it coming. And a lot of people down in Florida did not. So we bought a place. We were underwater really quick. My wife's business, because everybody else is underwater and because everybody else is going bankrupt and because everybody else is foreclosing, they're not doing events. We're not spending 50 grand to host a party for our executives. It ain't happening. So my wife's business folds, unfortunately, and then, we're stuck. And it gets to the point, Rocky, where we're deciding whether we pay the electricity bill, whether we pay the water bill, whether we pay the mortgage, or whether we buy groceries. I mean, it was that tight. And I'm working, it's funny because I'm working at ING Academy at the time, and here's Maria Sharapova pulling up in her Porsche. And I'm sitting there going, how the heck am I going to talk to these athletes when I can't even afford a 69-cent bottle of soda water, which we're having arguments about in the grocery store. Right? Lo and behold, we have a couple conversations with a couple bankruptcy lawyers, and the one that we ended up with says to us, if you're ever going to go bankrupt, now is the time. We're talking about an absolute financial crash where, major financial firms are closing, right? Right. And he says to us, and it was so true, as far as you were from bankruptcy a year ago, as far as you'll be away from it within 6 months of this. And so whoa, okay. So we do it, and it was the best financial decision we ever made. Absolutely. And it's hard, right, Rocky? For those people listening to this, I'm sure if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business leader, there's been moments, and I don't know what the stats are for successful businesses. Maybe you know it off the top of your head, Rocky, of how many people actually go bankrupt, but you hear it all the time. They do, right? They got to fail before you grow. And one of the phrases that I always say is, it's not how far you fall, it's how high you bounce. And so that moment of going bankrupt allowed us to live in our house, which eventually got foreclosed, but allowed us to live there for about a year without having to pay rent or the mortgage at this point. And so we were able to save that money as much as we could. And then little did we know that you could really easily, after that period, like, people were still like giving loans out even if you had gone bankrupt. So we were able to buy a better place in a better area at a very, very reduced price. And so, and then that kind of started us back into a better path. And then my wife kind of looked at it and go, wait a second, there's like, we can buy a place for 20 grand down here and rehab it for like 30 grand. And then we can sell it for 150. Maybe I should do that a little bit. So she started flipping houses. And sure enough, within 3 years, we're back and we're on solid footing, and it just goes from there.
Nice. That was interesting times. And that was the smart thing to do, is if you stop paying your mortgage, it was so backed up that it would take them a year to 18 months to get through the eviction. And the banks didn't want to, because the moment they evict you, they got to take care of the property. They got to pay the electric bill. They got to mow the lawn. So they just let things kind of go. And it took a while. In some cases, they sold the note. And so when they sold the note, they might sell it for 20 or 30 cents on the dollar. The person who bought it was going to go to the owner and go, Joshua, I'll cut you a new deal on your mortgage. Pay me half of what you were paying me and we'll make it work. And so all kinds of wild stuff went along. People seem to forget that. And one day we'll go through it again. I don't know when, but these things happen.
But now we know, right? Like that, and you learn from that stuff. The other thing, Rocky, that's really interesting about it too, maybe you have an insight on this, is like, why didn't more people take that path of bankruptcy? I mean, it wiped out all of our credit card debt. It wiped out all of this debt. It got us to like ground zero really fast. And I think for me, it was ego. It was emotion driven, right? It wasn't logically oriented.
I think it depends on where they were. So I think the people, it depended on where they were. You had a double whammy. You had an underwater house and an underwater business. Most people might have had an underwater house or 4 underwater houses, but personally, they were okay. Meaning, if I didn't have to pay for these 4 houses, I'd be all right. Take the houses, I'm still okay. People who were in their primary got TARP loans. So there were different deals. So it just depended, where am I in the scope of things? And that's really what it came down to. And
Yeah,
I don't think people thought they could get back on their feet that quickly. That was
right.
the other thing. Because you were always told, you go through bankruptcy, it's going to be years before you get a credit card.
I think literally within a month that people were sending me credit cards already. Like it was crazy. I mean, it was just the time though too, Rocky. But for me, I mean, and this kind of goes to what we talk about a lot, what I talk about a lot in the book is, making a decision out of emotion versus logic. And I think when we talk about business, we talk about leadership, and we talk about human performance, emotions really want to draw us away from logical destinations. And oftentimes, what's best for the situation. And so for me, that was a perfect example of it. And thankfully, I had a great father who talked to me about, just make the best out of what's in front of you. Find a way to move through things. And I had a very astute financial wife who said, hey, listen, look at bankruptcy is definitely an option here. We should really move that direction. And it kind of, like I said, it changed everything for us.
Well, congrats on making it work. How did you get into working with athletes, though, on the mental side of performance? Because as you said, back then it wasn't that big a deal.
No, it wasn't. And I can vividly remember being in the restaurants, and the chef of the last restaurant I worked at goes, why the heck you want to do that? You're not going to make any money doing that. You might as well just be a waiter. You make the same money. And I remember laughing at him because I was like, no, man, that's not the way my brain is working. I see a way better path. And I also see that this is a potential game changer for athletes. And, I was proven right by that in terms of the athletes that often sought us out in the world of sports psychology. It was always interesting because I think, Rocky, you hear this term, hey, sports psychologist, that's somebody who's all messed up. That guy's a mess in the head, and they got to go talk to this psychologist. And it was the exact opposite. It was the Hall of Fame players that were seeking us out because they knew this was a competitive advantage. Hey, if I can make my mind a weapon, that is going to be better than the other people. And they also understood that talent ran it. I got into it again. I was looking for something different. Knew the restaurant industry, is awesome as it was, and so fun, and so many great people that I met there. I just knew that my time was ticking on that, and so I was looking for something different to do in my life. And I was always an athlete. I had rode crew in college. I run a couple marathons. I had rock climbed, mountain bike, this, that, the other thing. And I was on a mountain bike ride one day, and I got to this element that I couldn't get across. And I just kind of like, it was all about like, I was looking at it like, oh, I've done this before. I should be able to do it again. And I couldn't go, like, it was a stream, and I just couldn't get across the bridge because I was thinking about all the bad stuff that could happen. I was like super negative in my brain. And then there was a switch in my brain about not thinking about if I could do it or not, but more about how to do it. And so I got into what's known now as process orientation. And so once I figured that, once I had this like kind of epiphany, it was like literally like, St. Paul and the apostles, like, oh, right? Like this huge moment out there in Pleasantville, New York. And I had this moment like, wow, all I did was change how I was thinking about something, and the results of it changed. So think about how often we don't do that in the world of business. Here's an opportunity to change how I look at the situation, to change how I think about it, to change whether or not I believe this could occur. And then all of a sudden, once I change how I think about things, or I change the lens, the results start changing. And I think that that's so that was a huge moment for me. And I said, I want to study this. And then I found out there was this field called sports psychology. I was like, I like athletes. I was an athlete. I can relate. So I went back to school. I went to Brooklyn College at the time. I always joked that I lived on the Upper West Side. I had to go out, take the 2 train to Flatbush Avenue, uphill both ways, right, in a snowstorm. So anyway, I did 20 credits out there. I went to Ithaca College, got my master's degree, got the internship down at IMG Academy, and then went from there. But I've always been really curious, Rocky, about greatness. So like I've always been kind of like, what makes people great? Like what makes the greats the greats? What makes the greatest the greatest? What makes the beasts the beasts? I want to know. And it's always been really, really like a kind of driving curiosity for me. So that's one of the major reasons I went into the world of sports, because that's where the elite play.
Did you find the answer?
There's some of the answers. Some of the answers are in the book, right? There's really 6 things that I've seen a lot of, and we can get into that in a minute.
We'll go into those.
Yeah, there's some commonalities there. And I think you go ahead. Sorry, you're going to ask a question.
No, we'll get into that with the book and we'll talk about it. But as you were talking, it reminded me I'm taking this program with Joe Hudson. He does Art of Accomplishment. And so he coaches usually the top people in Silicon Valley. And so one of the exercises is somebody says something and the answer is, what's awesome about that? So I just went through bankruptcy. What's awesome about that?
Yeah.
And when you start to have this conversation, it naturally shifts you. And by the end, you're just giggling. And then you come back to the beginning and it's like, you just went through bankruptcy. What's awesome about that? And your entire perspective is 180 and you
Yeah.
see so many opportunities to go forward.
That's I love that. That's a great framework. That's awesome.
Yeah, I loved it when I got introduced to it. So let's flip to the book. What inspired you to write the book, Win Today, 6 Steps to Mental Resilience, Peak Performance, and a Thriving Life?
Well, it's the thing that I see, especially getting out there and speaking to different companies, whether it be, 10,000 people at McDonald's or, 20 executives at Johnson and Johnson. One of the things that really jumps out at me is the understanding that the mental tools that we use in the world of athletics, most people don't have access to. And what I mean by that is they're not taught them in a structured, kind of coherent way. They might read a book here and pick up one thing, they might read something else over here and pick up another thing. But it always blew me away. If you go into a locker room in a baseball organization or a football organization, NBA, tennis, whatever, you will always see at least 50 to 70% of the people with their eyes closed, headphones on, getting ready for the game. And what they're doing is they're visualizing, they're seeing themselves in action, they're going through their performance before it even goes, right? It begins before it begins. It's a phrase we use all the time. You talk to executives, salespeople, operations people, they are not visualizing their performances. Typically, it is very rare. Right?
Good
Go ahead, sorry.
salespeople will.
Yes,
Good salespeople.
exactly.
That is part of yes.
And that's what I'm saying. The good ones do. But what I'm saying to you in the world of sports, everybody does, good or bad. And so that was a big eye opener for me is that, yeah, the good ones, they're going to ingest all this stuff. They're going to figure out, hey, if I train my mind, that's going to be that's going to be an absolute competitive advantage for me. And then you have your ones who are on the bottom who are really underperforming and they're not going to do anything anyways. They're just going to kind of just cash a paycheck. But it's that middle. It's that magical middle of any organization. That's where the difference always happens. And so what I kept seeing over and over and over again was this magical middle didn't have access to this stuff. They didn't know about it, right? It's not just the 40 guys in the Chicago Cubs locker room, right? It was, hey, there's millions of people out there that maybe I can reach out to and touch and inspire to let them know that you have a choice in your life. You have a choice, and there are tools that can help you define who you're going to be in the world. You don't have to live by default. You can live by definition. And so that's what I really want to do, and that's what inspires me and gets me excited.
Out of curiosity, what is the reception to that? And what is the follow through to that by middle management? And here's why I asked this question. I would go to these Tony Robbins events, 12,000 people in the stadium. I'm like, oh my God, people are going to do stuff. 3 weeks later, 98% of them do nothing. And so I'm like, are people doing it or are they just getting excited for the moment? And then
that's been the shift. And I think that there's this thing called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. I don't know if we've ever seen this graph or not. It's a brilliant graph. And what it shows is that after a keynote speech or any type of learning environment, within about 20 minutes after that ends, the audience will forget about 40% of the stuff that was just said. Within a week, they'll forget 80% of it. Okay? So how do we solve for that? Well, you solve for that by putting people into action and getting them into action. One of the things, so you didn't mention this earlier, but one of my other roles in the world is I work with an awesome company called Limitless Minds. It was started by Russell Wilson, who was the Super Bowl winning quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks, a Hall of Fame career. And Russ had an amazing mental skills coach named Trevor Moad. Trevor was my mentor. Trevor tragically passed away in 2021 from cancer. And so I picked up the baton for the company, Limitless Minds. And what we do is we go into corporate settings and do the same type of training that we would do with athletes, but we do it geared towards the corporate sector and the corporate athlete. What we found is, yes, exactly right, Rocky. You go and you give a keynote, everybody feels great. You talk to the leaders, 3 weeks later, nobody remembers anything. So how do you solve for that? You solve for that by really, really, really investing in the force multipliers within the organization. Typically, those are your frontline leaders, your first and second line leaders, right? And so what you do is we would go, okay, we're going to do this presentation. Great. We're going to do the keynote. Awesome. Now we're going to meet with those frontline managers, either virtually or live, and we're going to meet with them within about a month. Okay. Then we're going to meet up with them again in another quarter. Then we're going to meet up with them again in another quarter. And we're going to constantly keep coming back and keep coming back and keep coming back. Excellence is born out of repetition, right? So then what you're getting is you're getting a common language. You're getting a common language across the organization. One of the big key components of our Limitless Minds training, and I talk about it in the book under the chapter Stop the Storm, is this thing called neutral thinking. And what neutral thinking is dealing with what's so without creating a giant story behind it. In other words, it's dealing with the concrete and objective facts without making a giant judgment or a grade on it, right? Here's what we got. What's the best next step? But when you can say to people, hey, stay neutral here, or hey, let's get neutral here, it gives them a common language to access that logical rather than emotional process. And I think that's one of the big things that changes it. But you are right, Rocky. If you just go and give a keynote speech, good luck. Seriously.
Well, but the second half is the follow-up and the consistency, because what I have found in corporate is every 6 months there's a new initiative and a
Yep.
new way of doing things. And we're like, you don't like it? Just wait. There'll be something new in 6 months.
Yeah, 100%. And we hear that all the time with the companies we come into. I mean, but to that end, I mean, we've been with Johnson & Johnson for 7 years now, right? And it's like, and it's constant. And I'll tell you what, Rocky, like not to toot their horn a little bit, but you go into that organization, Johnson & Johnson, and it's different. You can feel it. You can feel it. You can feel it in the people they have. You can feel it in the questions they ask. You can feel it in the investment that they have in the human being there versus the human doing. And it's really there's a reason we keep coming back. They keep having us back 7 years because they know, hey, this stuff is important. And it doesn't, like, it's not mental magic. It's not like snapping your fingers and all of a sudden you're better. It's not that at all. It's constant work. You know, you do the work starts working on you. And I think that's what I think people get wrong in this field of mental training or performance coaching or something. I think they just say one thing one time, and then the person's going to be all of a sudden more motivated, more focused, more energized, more positive, whatever. No, it's every single friggin' day. And it's over and over and over and over again. And it's not hard, but it takes discipline.
I agree with you. Nowadays, I'm in the world of small business. In the world of small business, we basically say owning the company is a self-development journey, and the company will only go as far as the owner. So if the owner isn't going to develop themselves and grow, neither will the company. Like, what got you to 1 million is not going to get you to 5, and what got you to 5 won't get you to 10, and what got you to 10 won't get you to 50. You have to constantly change, grow, and step up and do things dramatically differently, or your company won't grow and you'll be stuck. And so I agree with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, these are two that you just nailed two of the steps in the book. So, see, Rocky, you're already on it. I think
Well,
Rocky
so
wrote the book.
let's name the 6 steps.
Well, let me just tell you the 2 steps you nailed. The 2
Okay.
steps you nailed are actually the last 2 steps, which are choose growth and mile zero. Okay, choose growth is all about getting that 1% better every single day and just finding a way to learn and be open-minded and have that growth mindset and recognize. What are you looking for, Carol Dweck right now? You looking for Carol
No,
Dweck on
I
your
don't know.
bookstore?
We lost that book. I have it, but there's the other one, and I had him on the podcast. Was the Bezos letters.
Oh yeah, great.
Stephen went through all of the things, and every day is day one.
Yeah, and that's what I coined mile zero. If you've been to Key West, there's a signpost there, mile zero. I saw it years ago, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, because is that the beginning or is that the end? I don't know. It's mile zero, but it's certainly a reset. And I thought that was, and that's the whole key is that, like, one of the things we always say at Limitless Minds, especially when we finish our talks, is the past is not predictive of the future. What you think and what you do in the here and now is. And so that's mile zero. The past is the past. You can learn from it. You can grow from it. You can get better because of it, but it's typically not going to repeat itself. unless your thoughts and your behaviors repeat themselves, right? Then you're giving yourself a better chance to repeat it. But if you don't want what happened in the past to reoccur, then change how you're thinking about stuff and change what you're doing, right? It sounds really simple. It's not simple to do because you have to be aware. You have to be willing to notice it. You have to be willing to do the work. And then once you do the work, again, the work starts working on you.
We say life is pretty simple. Doing simple is hard. And that's what it comes down to. So we got the last two. What are the first four? I just shoot to the end. That's me.
Well, that's the great thing about the book too, is you can flip through it and you can just choose wherever you want to pick it. It's just kind of different stories and highlighting different things. But a lot about the Chicago Cubs and my time there and winning that World Series after 108 years, which was, pretty special. That being said, the other four steps are the first thing is to define your story. We've already alluded to that. You can live a life by default or you can live a life by design. And that's what Define Your Story is all about. Is the first step in that is setting an intention every day. Well, who am I going to be today? Who am I going to be? Am I going to be lazy? Rocky, I made the choice yesterday, Sunday. It was the first Sunday I've had off in a while. I didn't have to drive my kid to the basketball tournament. I didn't have to do anything. I was like, literally, laundry was already done. I didn't even have to fold laundry yesterday. And I just said, wow, you know what? I am not going to do anything today. Like, I chose that. But at least I chose it, and that's okay to choose, right? So I defined myself as like lazy and relaxed, which I was. Took an ice bath. It was great. The second one is build bonds.
Before you go
you want
on,
to ask a question? Okay, yeah.
No.
Go. What do you got?
So when we look at our principles, one of the core principles is you have to know your purpose, meaning you have to define what you want out of life.
Yeah.
And so that is a core principle. You're saying it in a different way, but once you have clarity on what you want in life, it's much easier to get it because you turn the distractions off. The other one that we talk about is the one that you're about to talk about, which is relationships.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll go back with you there too on your, defining your purpose, because I think what ends up happening too is there's a level of accomplishments that people want to achieve. Okay, these are my goals that I want to go to, and I'm saying there's a step even before that, and that step of okay, here are the goals I want to get to. Well, how do I have to be, and how do I have to act, and what are the things I have to do in order to get that? And that's the intention setting. Is I'm going to be this way, which is going to mean I'm going to do these things. Like, I'm going to be focused today. Well, what does that mean? Maybe it means I shut my phone and put it on do not disturb. And I have this list of things I'm going to accomplish today, right? Then I'm going to be focused, right? So it's a little bit like that. So just making that point. Build bonds. Yeah, without a doubt. Relationships. Be curious rather than judgmental. Questions, learn, listen to understand versus to be right. You do those simple things, communicate. Talk to people, find out who they're about, find out what they're about, learn from them, because ultimately, what's the old adage? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that's so true. That's so true. This one really came out of Tim Tebow. If you know Tim Tebow, he was the former Florida Heisman Trophy winner, played in the NFL, but then he was with the Mets when I was working with the Mets. And he and I were having a conversation after spring training before COVID. This is like right before COVID hit. And he talked about how, there's this thing called the negativity bias in psychology, where your brain is set up to protect you, typically is negative. So it's going to, protect you and get you in that defensive mode. And he was like, yeah, that's interesting. But I really think the brain is set up so we have to make connections. And I agree with it. I think the brain is set up to make connections. But the reason it's set up to make connections is because it's protecting itself. Strength in numbers, like sardines, that whole thing.
He got wrapped up in not hit like what he did, but the world had trouble with him.
I think, what's interesting about that is the world gets a little scared by things that are different. And Tim is a very different human being because he's so faithful and it's real and it's not like this fake thing, but he comes across that way because it's so passionate and it's just, I think the world does do that. Listen, they're going to build you up and then they're going to knock you down, Rocky. That's just the way it goes, especially in pro sports, because that's the narrative. Like, why do people watch pro sports? Drama. It's the ultimate reality TV show. And they want to be fans, right? So they want to be part of something that's bigger than them and they want to get excited about it. So ultimately, if it's a drama and you're winning all the time, of course they want to knock you down. It's, the hero's journey, right?
I guess so. I've always struggled because when you look at money in sports, and what I'm talking about is the players, very few of them make money, and those that do, very few of them keep it. And it's like, what are you all doing? You went there to get rich, and then you blew it all. And so for me, it's always been that financial struggle with the mentality there.
Yeah, and I think it's real. It's interesting though too, because especially like in the world of baseball, like the only guys that get paid are in the major leagues. Like the guys in the minor leagues are living below poverty standard. I told the
They're
story
making chump
recently.
change.
Yeah, I told the story recently of a kid named David Bodie who I loved working with. He was in the Chicago Cubs organization, and I remember him telling me about, asking me like, man, I don't know how long to keep this up. He's like 28 years old. He's got a kid. He's got a wife, and they're eating. They don't have a table in their apartment. They're eating off of a cardboard box every night. Fast forward to the end of that year, he gets called up to the major leagues, does really well, signs a 5-year, $15 million deal, and it's just like, I bet you have a table now, Bodes. So that's awesome, right? So that's the positive stories. But yeah, there's a lot of guys out there that it's tough. It's really hard. The big stories are the big stories, but yeah, for most of them it's not as glamorous as you think it is.
But the question is, did he keep the 15 million?
Without I would I
I
would
don't know
assume,
him, so and we don't
I
need
would
to
assume
talk
so.
about
He was
him.
a
But
smart guy. He was
well,
on
there
top
you
of
go.
it.
There is one team in baseball that's different, the Savannah Bananas, but
Yeah.
they're in a whole different league of their own.
That's an amazing story too. Like he had to take out a massive loan just to even get that thing off the ground. I was just reading about that. That's an incredible. You got to have him on, Rocky.
I've had Emily Cole on my other podcast, his wife. Jesse was in my mastermind group way back when, and when he shows up, he wore the yellow tuxedo. He
That's
wore it
phenomenal.
he owned it. He did it. He had a dream and he was relentless about it. And it's funny because when he bought that team, he did the back of the napkin math and he realized the only people who buy baseball teams like this are people who are rich and have a hobby because baseball don't make money. And he has turned that team into the highest percentage profitable baseball team against any pro team. Like percentage of revenue, they blow it away. He has done an amazing, amazing job. I had asked you about Profit First at the beginning, and that's one of the reasons he did that was he read that book and he's like, the math doesn't math. And he knew enough to say, how do I build something that's totally different? And he's changing. He understands something. Baseball is about entertainment. How do I entertain people? And how do I run a baseball team without paying anybody? So his entertainment is essentially free. And not only is his entertainment free, they bring their family. So when
Yeah.
grandma's dancing on the field or your little 12-month-old baby is crawling on the field, everybody's coming to see. And the other thing he did that was cool is, which I think pro sports is going to lose their edge because the average kid can't go anymore. What he did was pay one price, food's included, so is
Yeah.
parking. And so it goes back to being something a family can afford to do, and the kids start to love the game. And with all of pro sports today, unless you're rich, you're not taking a kid to a game and they get to
Yeah,
love it.
yeah. The biggest shame for me right now, Rocky, is the World Cup situation. And here's an opportunity for us to bring the world together, and they're charging whatever $100 a ticket. You're just like, oh my gosh, like it's ridiculous. So I
You know
don't
how
know.
much it is for New Jersey Transit to get to the
I heard
stadium?
about this. It's like $100, right? It's ridiculous.
$150. And they said you're not allowed to walk. What are you going to do?
Hey, listen, you cannot go.
I'll be in that camp.
Exactly. But here, okay, this is perfect. This is a nice segue though, because the next two steps, Rocky, one of them is stop the storm, which is about recognizing that the world will have negative things in it. Like you can't avoid it. It's like negative things will occur. And our brain is geared towards finding those negative things, right? So we can protect ourselves. Again, it's called the negativity bias. That being said, what we see, especially in the best of the best, is they recognize that negativity, but they don't buy into it. And they go to this place called neutrality and they get to logic, which we've talked about a couple times already on the podcast. They get to logic versus dealing with the emotions. And instead of being negative or being super positive in a phony way, what they do is they get to this neutral ground where now they have a choice. Now they have a choice. Here I am. This is what's so. I'm not creating a giant story around it. And here's what I got to do next to go from A to B. And that's it. Right. So that's that one. And then the other one is you are here. right? It's about being present and in the moment. It's about focus. You talked about, Jesse and the Savannah Bananas. There was a focus there that was laser like. And that's what we talk about. That's what I talk about in that chapter. And there's definitely different tools and skills that you can do to enhance your ability to stay focused. Because here's what most people don't tell you about focus is it's kind of impossible to stay focused. What ends up happening is you'll be focused for a little while. You'll get distracted. You'll get pulled away. The best of the best of the best quickly notice when they get pulled away and they draw themselves back in. They escort their focus back to what really matters and what's important now versus being distracted and then going down that.
And in today's world, I think it's harder than ever to stay present because there are a billion things that distract you and keep you from being focused or from staying on your game, whatever you choose to be your game. And kind of going back to your thing, I think you have to be intentional with picking your game. You have to pick the game for you, not going, oh, they're all like this, so I'm going to pick that game or I'm going to pick that team or whatever it is. And so that's a big part of it.
Yeah, you got to be authentic to yourself, Rocky. Authenticity matters. It really, really, really does. And in today's day and age, with all the AI and all this, like that's going to be an absolute competitive advantage.
And this is what I think is just coming out right now. In a world of AI, where all of a sudden you don't know what's real and what's fake, and content and knowledge are everywhere. Everything that you've taught us, I can go on ChatGPT and figure it out, right? I can learn everything. But being able to sit in front of you and have a real conversation, be held accountable, take action, I think we're going to go back to that closeness and from being all about me to being much more about we and people wanting those connections, which is one of your things, right? Build bonds. So I
Without a
think
doubt.
that's coming back into it. And I think you will see that as much as everyone's afraid of AI, I think the future of AI is becoming more human.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. And I think you kind of nailed it there, Rocky, too. Like there's going to be this, you can get any type of knowledge you want. Like you can literally do an MBA on Chat GPT, I think, right? You can get all the knowledge, but the knowledge isn't the key. It's the action. There's a formula I have in the book. It's K minus A equals 0. Knowledge minus action equals absolutely bupkis. It equals nothing. So all of you, if you only have the knowledge and you don't put it into action, it's just knowledge.
And I think that right there is the key because and this is, I think, where school got screwed up with this because all they did was want you to know knowledge. They didn't want you to take action. Sit down, learn this stuff. Don't move till the bell. Don't ask too many questions. There's no action. Like action is no, just memorize. And it hasn't changed. And I think that's the problem.
Yeah, that's what those project-based schools, like I see it all the time. I'm lucky enough to live in Sarasota, Florida, and the school districts down here are phenomenal. There's a little school called Pineview, and Pineview was ranked like the number 3 middle school in the entire country, and it's just like it's public school. It's awesome. But it's all like project-based stuff. So the kids are like hands-on, active, learning stuff, figuring it all out. And it's just, I see it with my kids. They definitely have a leg ahead. It's pretty awesome. But yeah, you just put it into place. Like that's exactly right. Like you got to get people into action or else they're not going to learn. And I think that's that's another reason I wrote this book too, because this isn't just knowledge. At the end of every single chapter, there's action steps, and the workbook will be coming out, hopefully in the fall. And so that's it. You got to put stuff and it's every day. And that's why it's called Win Today, because it's every single day. If I wake up and I don't set an intention, I just decide not to even do that day. Or if I don't reach out and connect with others, if I don't get present, if negativity just roots in my head, bouncing around, if I don't decide to get a little bit better, if I don't reset, and I'm going to lose that day, right? There's a really good chance I'm going to lose. But if I do all those things, there's a really good chance that today's going to be awesome.
And I like that. I think you have to pick the right win for the day. Even if this is a psychological thing that I just learned. I finally learned about why it happens and I didn't realize it. People say, I'm going to go to the gym 4 days. They go 1 day, they go 2 days, they miss the third day. They go, I'm done. They won't go back day 3 and 4. And I forget the word for it. I was like, seriously? And it's true. I think people just need to set winnable goals for every day and be okay with that winnable goal as long as it's the 1% better that you talk about.
Yeah.
You're not trying to hit a grand slam every time you get up to the plate. You're just trying to make movement. And I don't know if you ever read Moneyball. Yeah. So, in Moneyball, they're like the right metrics. You've got all the wrong metrics. And I didn't realize how bad baseball was at metrics because everything is statistics in baseball. They just were looking at the wrong ones. And so I think that's a big key is pick the right things, take a little bit of action every day, and over time, you will achieve greatness.
And little by little becomes a lot, right? It's the what we call the aggregate of marginal gains. You get, that's it, little by little. And I think too, it's interesting you talked about baseball there in the statistics because one of the things that baseball hasn't figured out yet is, and I use this quote in the book. It's an Albert Einstein quote. There are things that count that can't be counted, and that's really about the human element. So even if this guy, is supposed to throw a slider in the 2-1 count, you got to take into the fact that maybe he was in a fight with his wife before the game today and he's not feeling super confident and, his kid's sick in the hospital, right? So maybe I shouldn't throw that slider because he's going to grip the ball a little bit too tight and it's going to ride up in the zone and the guy's going to smash it. So maybe even though the statistics say that and all the analytics say that, I got to take that human element into account too. And I think that's one of the big things that baseball's missing right now.
I heard they finally learned about diet, which also amazes me.
Hey, no, we had a nutritionist at every single affiliate in the minor leagues, let alone the major leagues. And we had, organic grass-fed things, smoothies, and the whole 9 yards. They had it. We had it in Chicago there in 2015. So we were ahead of the curve.
Yeah, that wasn't that long ago. It just amazes. People look up to these things, but when you lift up the covers, you're like, wow, there's a lot of things that could definitely be done next better. And
in any organization, right? In any.
So true. What's one truth about success you wish more people understood?
I think one of the big things about success that people misunderstand is that it takes a while. It takes constant discipline and effort over and over and over again. And you can have success every single day. It's just kind of what you look for. And if you stack successes day in and day out, that duration of going to A to Z will shorten.
I'm only going to say this because I did a talk today. Do you know how much $1 doubled for 31 days is?
It's probably like 17 million.
It's $1 billion.
Yeah,
but
there it is.
Do you know what happens if you wait 3 days? You lose about 900 something million dollars. And so you're down to 100 million. And that's just show up, do the work. Tiny steps. You started with a little teeny dollar. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
You have a choice. You have a choice on how you look at the world. You have a choice on no matter what comes your way, how you manage it and how you respond to it. The quote at the bottom of every single one of my emails is from John Wooden, the UCLA coach, and it's things turn out best for those that make the best out of the way things turn out. And I wish I had learned that earlier in life. Pyramid of Success is up there. He's up there.
He's over
gotta
there.
Be. He's got to be.
It's funny. I coached soccer when my kids were young, and I literally did a lot of the things he talked about. I had no idea. I just knew, hey, this is the way you do things, and it worked out. But yeah, I'm with you there. If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
You're going to mess up. It doesn't define you. Learn from it. Keep going. My son is literally the reason I'm traveling today is because I'm helping my son pack up from college to come home, and he's taking a final as we speak, and he was pretty nervous about it. I just gave him that advice.
It's okay. I think we put too much on college. By the time my kids got to college, I started to realize the game, and I was like, if you want to quit, you can.
Yeah. Well, the thing that's great about Florida University, I don't know if you know this or not, but like the University of Florida systems, like I think there's 11 total state schools down here: University of Florida, Florida State, University of Central Florida, things like that. $200 a credit if you live in state. I mean, that's an insanely cheap amount of money for a college university these days. University of Florida was the #1 public university in the country last year. And they also have this thing called Florida Bright Futures down here, where if you graduate with a 3.0, and you get a certain score on your ACT or SAT and you volunteer 100 hours, there is no tuition.
Wow.
It's almost like
So
the City University of New York back in the day.
they make it easy. If people would like to learn more about you and the book, where do they find you?
JoshuaLifrak.com. Lifrak. There is a landing page there that where it takes you to Barnes and Nobles or Amazon or any of the, if you're in Europe, Waterstones. And so any of the booksellers will be there. But again, Joshua Lifrak, Lifrak.com. And if you have any questions for me specifically, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. That's the best place to find me. It's just my name on the LinkedIn platform. Glad to answer any questions for you.
Cool. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Rocky, my pleasure.
Hey, thanks for checking out the full unedited video of the Richer Soul podcast. You can get the full audio podcast with intro, outro, and a ton more details here on YouTube or whatever your favorite podcast player is. Don't forget, we've got hundreds of episodes for you to go back through, and you can also get episode information on the Richer Soul website as well. Don't forget to subscribe so you're automatically updated as to what's going on and every time we release a new episode. The first few episodes of the Richer Soul podcast actually lay out the entire framework that everything is built on over all of these years. So check them out as well. Thanks for listening.